Hi, it's Josh Goldberg here. Today I'm talking about attachment trauma and how it plays a very important role in the formation of borderline personality disorder, narcissistic personality disorder, and antisocial personality disorder, which is the psychopath or the sociopath. So this information I got from two very highly qualified psychologists, internationally renowned, that I follow, and also from my own client cases. When you deal with 100 people plus that have personality issues or are dealing with personality issues, it's a great database of information to get reliable data from. Okay, so this is not my own published research, it's not peer reviewed, this is just my own explanation and my own representation of attachment trauma and how it's linked to these personality disorders in the cluster B spectrum. Okay, so let's take a look at what do we get from our parents in childhood, from age 0 to 6 or 8. What do we get from our parents? Okay, so from the father we basically get life skills and discipline. From the mother, at this young age, we get our sense of identity, and we also get our attachment style. Okay, so one might say that at a young age, from 0 to 6 or 0 to 8, that the mother is more influential on the formation and the development of the child. In this case, we're talking about attachment, so the mother is the focal point. Okay, the mother is the focus, because the child gets their attachment style from their relationship with their mother from age 0 to age 6 or 8, give or take. Okay, so if a child is born into a situation where the mother is in some form of distress, or she is ill, or she is emotionally unavailable, maybe she was also dealing with a personality disorder herself and therefore she emotionally abuses the child. Anything that creates a situation for the child where the child feels that the love that they're getting from the mother is conditional, or if the mother is emotionally neglectful. Okay, so I made a video on emotional neglect from childhood. I'm going to put a link to that video in the description. I highly recommend you go watch it. So if the child is emotionally neglected by a mother who is there but not being attended to emotionally, or if the child is just treated as an object, okay, so an object of glorification, an object of the parent's status, anything where the child is emotionally abused, which means that the child is either neglected emotionally, or they're physically abused or used as some form of object. The child subconsciously knows that the love that they're getting from the parent, in this case the mother, is not real, okay, that it's conditional. And this is obviously very heartbreaking for the child, and the child becomes emotionally dysregulated and becomes full of anger and rage over time, okay, because the child has a feeling of being unloved by the mother. And what happens with this intense feeling that's pent up of anger and rage, okay, because the child will not hold this against the parents, okay, because the child gets food, shelter, and care from the parents. The child is relying on the parents for its own survival, okay, so the parents don't get they're not the target of these feelings, okay? The child won't blame the parents. So the first thing is anger and rage, okay? So this child is developing emotional dysregulation from being emotionally abused or neglected, and they have pent up anger and rage, which the child has to do something with that. So first of all, if the child decides that they want to express this anger and rage on themselves, okay, so they want to bring this back to the internal, then this is the foundation of borderline personality disorder, which is a self-destructive self-image and a self-destructive personality, essentially. Okay, so this is borderline personality when they turn this anger and rage on themselves. If the child decides to express this anger and rage and target it on the external, okay, on the external world, okay, so on other people and on the world in general, okay, so an external anger and rage is the psychopath. Okay, that's not very good writing, I apologize for that, but that's the psychopath. Okay, so the borderline personality will regulate their internal anger and rage by being self-destructive. The psychopath will regulate their anger and rage purely through the external, okay, through other people. That's why the sociopath and the psychopath are highly manipulative, goal-orientated, very destructive and dangerous people, okay, because the psychopath is 100% external, okay, so they don't have any internal objects, they don't have any internal reality, they only function through the external, they have zero empathy, and this is the psychopath, okay, when they take this anger and rage that's pent up from childhood emotional abuse and they project it to the world, okay, they use the external world to regulate these feelings of anger and rage. That's a psychopath. The next thing is the child's love, okay, because the child has a lot of love to give to the parents, and if the parents are not raising the child in a way where the child feels like that it is loved unconditionally, okay, if there's emotional abuse going on, the child does feel this subconscious sense that they're not loved, and on top of this anger and rage, the child has a lot of love that is, I guess, not being put back onto the parents. So what happens with this child's love, right? This love that the child has inside that is not going back to the parents. So if the child decides to turn that love inwards, okay, to themselves, then this is the narcissistic personality disorder, okay, which is 100% internal self-love. Okay, so if they turn that love back on themselves, that's a narcissistic personality. If the child projects that love to the external, okay, then this is a codependent. Again, that's very bad writing. I do apologize for that. So if the child turns the love on themselves, this is a narcissist. If the child takes this love that they're not giving to their parents and they project it out into the world, this is a codependent, which is someone that is overly focused on other people, okay, they identify themselves through other people, they're people pleasing, they fawn, they basically love bomb people, overcommit, over dedicate themselves to other people. This is a codependent, okay, so this is the different ways that a child can form through this very distressing childhood situation of being in a state of either emotional neglect or emotional abuse. Okay, so just recapping quickly. So if the child's anger and rage that is pent up, if they use the external world to regulate that, that's a psychopath or a sociopath. If they turn their anger and rage on themselves, this is a borderline person. If the child's love that they're not giving back to the parents, okay, because they're getting emotionally abused and they don't feel loved, if they use this love for themselves, that's a narcissist. And if they project this love out into the world, this is a codependent, a people pleaser, someone that is highly susceptible to being manipulated and abused. Okay, so this is a little bit of a wrap-up of how a parent-child relationship and attachment can basically form personality disorders, okay? So the other thing I wanted to mention quickly with adult relationships, so when this child grows up into an adult now, they have this structure going on, okay? And most of the time it involves a false self. The narcissist involves a false self, the psychopath are highly manipulative and very, very hard to know that you're dealing with a psychopath, even more so than a narcissist, okay? Because they're 100% external, they are very good at manipulation, and it's hard to know you're dealing with a psychopath on surface level. And a borderline person, they actually have internal and external objects, and they're very self-destructive. And when they love bombing someone, they tend to not present so much as a borderline. So all these three people, personalities, borderline, psychopath, and narcissist, do have some form of false alias, like a false self that you may be dealing with, at least at the start of the relationship, okay? If you get committed and involved in an intimate relationship with one of these three personality disorders. So just say this is you in the external, okay, and you get involved with someone with borderline personality, narcissism, or a psychopath. And the one thing that makes the relationship so difficult and so destructive is when a child is being emotionally abused, whether they're being emotionally neglected or they're being treated as an object or so on and so forth, or even parentified, okay? If the parents force the child to parent them and care for them, this is emotional abuse, parentification. So what's in a normal, healthy situation, the parents are meant to love the child unconditionally and to push the child away so that the child becomes sovereign and they become autonomous, okay? They have a healthy sense of self. Someone that was in this difficult situation as a child where the parents, especially the mother, were not able to do this for any given reason, the child and the mother don't actually have detachment, okay? So the child never detaches from the mother internally. So the child grows up carrying this internal relationship still with the mother that is unresolved and not detached. And when this person gets involved in an adult relationship now, they're actually having two relationships, okay? They're trying to have a relationship with another adult, and at the same time, they're dealing with an internal relationship with their mother who emotionally abused them or emotionally neglected them. So this is why people with borderline personality have such volatile, intimate relationships with their spouses, because this person is trying to have a relationship with this adult, and they're carrying this mother-child relationship that was unresolved and abusive, and there's a lot of anger and rage there. So whenever the spouse treats this person in a way that is loving and caring, okay, this adult now has this inner child and this inner mother that are still having turmoil, and it's not resolved and it's not detached. So the child is constantly battling feelings of betrayal for the internal parent, okay? Even if the parents have passed away, this is an internal relationship that the child has developed in childhood, okay? So it's not an external relationship. Even if the parents have passed away, this is an internal connection that is not detached, that should have been detached at an early childhood age, okay, as the child starts to grow up and develop. So this person is going to be in a very difficult position because they're basically competing with an internal mother, and a child will never betray their mother, okay? So this is where a lot of the abusive behaviors come from with the borderline personality, the psychopath, and also the narcissist, okay? It's the internal attachment trauma, okay? They haven't detached from their mother, and they're holding on to an internal abusive connection to an internal parent. And anytime that the child is treated anything differently, the adult now that has this internal relationship feels like they're betraying their mother, and they will use different behaviors to validate and prove to the internal mother that, see, I'm still with you, I haven't left you, and more or less keep this internal relationship going, which is terribly unhealthy for an adult relationship. So that's the struggle that another adult has dealing with a person that had this childhood experience and did have this attachment trauma. I actually made another video on how unresolved childhood trauma does destroy an adult relationship. I'll put a link to that video in the description as well. I hope this information has been helpful, and if you have any questions on this, please feel free to reach out. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and I look forward to seeing you in our next video.